Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to Global Atheist News, our weekly report on how religion has impacted humanity over the last 7 days. Dateline 17th of December 2022. First, I have some housekeeping announcements. After this weekend, our weekly shows, Global Atheist News, Views on the News, and Free Thought Hour, will be taking a break over the festive season, which falls on the next 2 weekends. I hope and expect that you will all have better family things to do than watch us. But we will be back on the 7th of January 2023 with our usual fare and some entertaining new shows that we have in the pipeline. Now for this week's headlines. Iran carried out a second execution over the protests. The US Congress passed a landmark bill protecting same-sex marriage. A Maryland report says priests and officials sexually abused 600 plus people. The Uttar Pradesh government is to develop religio-cultural spiritual centers into tourist attractions. The Barbados top court strikes down laws that criminalize gay sex. Kari Lake files another lawsuit claiming election fraud in Arizona. Church of England bishops are heading for a showdown on marriage for same-sex couples. Camberwell Bishop's fake COVID protection kits, how that preacher was convicted. Iran says it has publicly hanged a 23-year-old in what is the second execution linked to the recent anti-government protests. Majidreza Ranavad, 23, was hanged early on Monday in the city of Mashhad. The judiciary said a court convicted him of enmity against God. Ranavad was hanged just 23 days after his arrest. Human rights groups have warned that protesters are being sentenced to death after sham trials with no due process. His mother was not told of the execution until after his death. His family were then given the name of a cemetery and a plot number, and when they turned up, security agents were burying his body. See this video of the secret diaries of women protesting in Iran. The US House of Representatives gave final congressional approval to legislation that provides federal recognition of same-sex marriages. That's a measure that's born out of concern that the Supreme Court might reverse its support for legal recognition of such relationships. The measure now goes to Democratic President Joe Biden's desk for signature into law. The Respect for Marriage Act, as it is called, won Senate approval last month. See this video.
Marriage equality has been a law across our country since 2015 and proudly even longer in the state of California. Indeed, my thoughts today are with Phyllis Lyon and Del Martin, two dear friends and iconic trailblazers. And yet, since the Supreme Court's monstrous decision overturning Roe v. Wade, right-wing forces have set their sights on this basic personal freedom. This legislation is the latest step in House Democrats' fight to win full equality for LGBTQ Americans and forge a more perfect union that our children and their children, all of our children deserve. On this vote, the yeas are 258, the nays are 169, present 1. The motion is adopted.
Catholic priests and officials assigned to the Archdiocese of Baltimore sexually abused and tortured more than 600 people over the past 80 years, and the church helped to cover most of it up. There are almost certainly hundreds more victims of the rampant sexual abuse within the Archdiocese, according to a motion filed in Baltimore's Circuit Court. Boys and girls were abused with ages ranging from preschoolers to young adults. The report is not yet public, but the motion Attorney General Brian Frosh's office filed seeks to make it public. David Lorenz, Maryland State Director of the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests, said the abuse allegations appalled him, but he was not shocked. I'm horrified and I feel a lot of other things, but surprised is not one of them, he said. The Uttar Pradesh government is planning to develop all religio-cultural and spiritual centers of the state into attractive tourist destinations. They are working to develop Naimisharanya, a temple dedicated to Lord Vishnu in Sitapur, as a Vedic city and global center of spiritual, religious, and ecotourism. Plans for the whole city to be well developed with transit nodes and parking lots, charging points for electric vehicles, common civic amenities like a facilitation center, dharamshala, and food court will be provided. Dedicated footpaths will also be built for the safety of pilgrims visiting the place. A top court in Barbados has struck down colonial-era laws that criminalized gay sex. It's the third nation in the conservative Caribbean region to do so this year. The ruling issued by the Barbados High Court is a pivotal moment for activists and non-profit organizations who have long fought against such laws on the Eastern Caribbean island, including one that demands up to a life sentence for gay men found guilty of having sex. It's gone from a ripple effect to a tidal wave in the Caribbean, which is what everyone involved set out to achieve, said Taya Braun, chief executive of the London-based Human Dignity Trust, a human rights organization. While the laws were rarely invoked, they signaled that LGBTQ plus people were criminal and lesser citizens, she said. The striking down of the law reverses that and tells the entire society that this is a consensual contact and that what people choose to do with their private relationships is not the business of the law. Several Christian churches and organizations across the Caribbean have opposed the abolition of such laws, with support from some political leaders who invoke God in their arguments. There are now only 6 remaining countries in the Americas with similar old laws: Guyana, Grenada, Dominica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Jamaica, where members of the LGBTQ+ community have fled following violent attacks. Habitual election denier and Arizona gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake is yet again claiming election fraud, this time filing a 70-page lawsuit that calls for an order setting aside the certified result of the 2022 election and declaring that Kari Lake is the winner. Even before voting began, Lake refused to say that she would accept the results of the election unless she won. She described the race as botched before it was even called. Kari Lake lost the election by 17,000 votes, and all of the votes have been counted. This week, the bishops of the Church of England are meeting to finalise proposals to be submitted to a meeting in February of the General Synod about marriage for same-sex couples. The document they will be discussing, called Living in Love and Faith, focuses on many topics under the rubric of love and marriage, but it is same-sex relationships that are the most neuralgic. The meeting comes as support for the marriage of gay couples is growing within the church, most notably among evangelical members of the episcopate, the American branch, who have long opposed it. But if the bishops choose to recommend changing doctrine, they know that it will have consequences far beyond England's shores in the broader Anglican Communion. This summer, at the Anglican Communion's all-bishops meeting known as the Lambeth Conference, you may remember, the current Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, tried to mollify conservative bishops by reaffirming a 1998 declaration that gay sex is a sin, while reassuring liberal bishops by saying that he would not punish national churches in the communion that allowed priests to marry same-sex couples. Conservative bishops from the global south called Welby's refusal to discipline churches over gay marriage a lamentable position, but none threatened to leave. Now, Welby has risked infuriating both sides again when he told the Times newspaper in advance of the bishops' 2-day meeting this coming week that he would not say what he himself thinks about marriage for LGBTQ Christians. He declined to let his views be known on the issue, he said, because it was his role to be a source of unity. I'm not sure what I will be able to say during my time in this job. I can express my own view as far as I know my own mind, and it doesn't change, he said. But the role of Archbishop is to be a focus of unity. That isn't just convenient or pragmatic. In Christian thinking, that is part of God's call to church leaders. Therefore, I have to be convinced before God that is the right moment to do it. Camberwell's Bishop Climate, named Wiseman, was found guilty of fraud well over 2 years ago after the London Evening News exclusively revealed that he was cashing in on the pandemic with £91 coronavirus plague protection kits made of just oil and red string. An expert in public health from Imperial College London told the court that Wiseman's claims about his oil mixture were at best misleading. And an executive agency of the Department of Health and Social Care confirmed that in March and April of 2020, no licensed products existed for the treatment of COVID-19. Wiseman's claims preyed on people from the start of the first lockdown, a time when most of us were scared and worried about coronavirus and what the future held. Wiseman's behavior was little more than exploitative commercial opportunism disguised as an article of faith. During his trial, the court heard how the 47-year-old told his congregation at the Kingdom Church in Camberwell Station Road that they could drop dead from COVID if they did not buy his kits. After the story broke on March the 31st, 2020, a BBC investigation eventually led to charges being brought against him. Their secret phone recordings and testimony were key to the evidence against Bishop Climate. Southwark Trading Standards wrote to Wiseman, asking him to remove all mentions of plague coronavirus prevention from his literature and websites. When he didn't fully comply, they closed down the Kingdom Church. This week's Free Thought Hour, the show that follows this news, features John Peters, an escaped theist who promotes evolution and knows a lot about endogenous retroviruses. You can join in by texting your comments and questions. It's live and it's free. And don't forget to watch Views on the News, our spin-off show where a panel of opinionated people get a chance to express their views on this very news. We won't be back next week. The GAN team is taking a break. But this has been Global Atheist News. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, and so on, and have a happy Christmas.